I needed a place on my desk for all my pencils to go, so I made a glass takeout container. Now I need a place for all my Post-its to go, so I made a glass pizza box. Through hours and hours of algorithm training on TikTok, I have successfully curated content that is mostly stained glass, 3D printing, and cats. Recently, I saw a video on how to make a hinge, so I knew I eventually wanted to create a box. That's when I noticed I had a stack of Post-its unorganized on my desk. This was my chance to expand my takeout collection and include a pizza box. The box itself, as well as the hinge, is very simple. It's a 4x4 inch box with a color design to hold multiple size Post-its, all with a brass rod inside a slightly larger brass tube to create the mechanism. After putting the template on some tracing paper, I copied all the lines onto the colored glass. Silver Sharpies have been a super useful addition to the glass tools box because you can really see them on all types of glass. Things get a little smudgy, but you get the basic idea for where your lines need to be. Once the pieces are all traced out, it's time to cut them by using the glass scoring tool. This tool scratches the top of the glass, allowing for pliers to snap along that line. Once I have the pieces cut out, it's time to bring out the grinder. The grinder is honestly my least favorite part of glass work. It is messy, it's loud, and it takes a long time. I use the grinder to remove all of the sharp edges and make sure my lines are perfectly straight. The wonderful people on r/stainedglass over on Reddit have given me lots of grinder advice that has been incredibly helpful. I make sure to move around the grinder bit often to not stay in the same area for too long, and I have also made sure to keep my sponge incredibly clean, as well as created a cardboard barrier so water doesn't spray everywhere. After all the grinding is complete, I work on applying the tape. I personally like taping because it's pretty mindless and I can just watch Twitch the whole time. The thing you really need to be able to focus on though is making sure that your tape is centered on the edge of the glass. If you don't center your tape, one side will have a thicker line than the other, so you really just want to make sure that you are staying even along your tape application. Now it's soldering time. Again, thanks to my TikTok stained glass education, I have switched to gel flux. This stuff I use now is so much better than the liquid stuff I was using before. The liquid used to boil over and splash out when I applied the soldering iron. The gel flux is much thicker and never splatters. It's truly amazing. I also used this piece as a test for using lead-free solder. I haven't been thrilled with the idea of a lead-friendly hobby, so this was a good way for me to test a lead-free alternative on a smaller scale. The biggest problem people have with lead-free solder is the fact that it requires much higher heat than normal leaded solder. We have a Hakko soldering iron and it gets well past the heat that lead-free solder needs, so to me personally, it was no different to use. I will continue to use lead-free solder on all of our projects moving forward, unless I say for some reason otherwise. Let's take a look at that hinge now. Like I said before, the hinge is super simple. It is a small brass rod inside a slightly larger brass tube. With the brass rod inside the brass tube, I soldered the tube to the bottom of the pizza box. Then I bent the inner rod at the ends and attached those bent ends to the upper lid. This allowed the inner rod to rotate freely inside the bottom attached tube. Using this same method, I attached a kickstand inside in case I ever wanted to keep the lid open on my desk. The kickstand rests on the solder joint in the corner of the lid surprisingly securely. Now I personally prefer black lines on my stained glass projects, so I applied a black patina to the entire piece and then gave it a bath. After everything was cleaned, I brought the box back and started to work on the lid decorations. I saw someone use copper foil sheets to make decals for their pieces, specifically using them to create words for the top of their glass. I thought about doing this on the Cricut, but the copper foil sheets were super thin. So instead, I opted to use a scratcher to trace out the letters, followed by an X-Acto blade to cut out the remaining pieces. Then I used some less than sticky transfer tape to move the letters over to the piece. Since this all was insanely delicate, I did mess up the A on the first try, so I went back after the fact and added that A later. These letters can only take so much heat or they will lift off the glass, so you do need to work fast. I applied flux and did 1 or 2 passes on each letter. When I felt I couldn't do any more, I let it cool off and applied patina to the lettering. Let's take a look at some final shots. Huge shout out as always to all of our Patreon supporters. You guys are constantly encouraging us to make cool stuff and have been very supportive of the new skills that we want to try out. Though this file is basic, I will have it as well as all of our other files available on Patreon. Link is in the description below. If you have a recommendation for something you'd like to see us try out on the channel, we would love to hear about it. Leave a comment with some crafts you'd like to see us try out and we'd love to give it a try. Thanks so much for watching and see you guys next time.